Thank you, Bingo. What an intro. So, hello, Glug. Thanks very much for having me. My name's James Greenfield, as Bingo's already said. We've been mates since we were 17, and I've got lots of stories about him. So if anyone wants to hear them, I'll be at the bar afterwards. So we're only 6 months old. We started on January the 5th this year. There's 3 partners. Caroline and Joey are out here somewhere. Put your hands in the air over there. And we've got a studio in London Bridge, and there's 8 of us. And when we go and see people, this is what we tell them what we do. We make things come alive. Lots of people say, you know, we do this, we do that, etc., etc. But it's really simple. I like doing brand. I like doing digital. Why can't you do both? Of course you can do both. Why are we called Koto? Because of this man. This man's Kenya Hara, who's a really famous Japanese designer. And it's really hard to come up with a name for your agency. There's lots of options, and you kind of pore over them, and you think, is it right, is it not, etc., etc. And then one day I was on the way to work, where I used to work, and I was reading an interview with him, and he said this. And I thought, yeah, that's right. Because I think a lot of people in the world are obsessed with things looking beautiful, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. But he also said this. And I thought, yeah, I'm really into that. That's really good. So I opened WhatsApp, sent it to Caroline and Joey. We all agreed with it, and that's very simple. And then later found out it's also Finnish for home, and that's a really important thing because culture, people being together, working together, you spend more time with the people you work with than the people you live with, and experience is a really important part of what we do every day. So we pride ourselves on working with businesses of all scales, from startups to the world's biggest brands. Doing some stuff like that. But prior to founding Koto, I was responsible as creative director at a company called Design Studio, as leader of a team of 5 for something that you could call the Vagina Monologues, which is coming up with this. Some people see bum, some people see boobs, some people see a fanny. It's meant to be Balo, which is about belonging anywhere. But anyway, it did quite well. It's got 4 meanings: people, places, love, and A for Airbnb. As creatives, we all get to work on all kinds of scales of projects. Some things we really believe in, some things we don't. And Airbnb was the first time for a long while that something had come across my desk where I thought, this is a product that I really, really believe in and think has got an incredible amount of potential. And an interesting thing about this is that a lot of people think the logo is dead, and Airbnb, for me, as a task, was proving that actually the complete opposite. The logo is more important than ever. And if you Google Airbnb logo, this, which is from my sketchbook, is the 2nd most found image. And I think it's because people are looking for meaning in the symbols that we look at every day. And whether that's a UI interaction or something that we understand, it's really important that this symbol stood for something. And the worst thing that we could have done with Airbnb is turn them into a hotel with a plastic card where people let themselves into their homes and lost what's important. But what we wanted to make was a problem that all of us identified, was that I'm sure anyone's got if they've stayed in an Airbnb. You get given a set of keys and it hasn't got a key ring, and it's really irritating because key rings have been around forever. And so we wanted to make something, top left-hand corner, that people could make themselves and make their own, but it was a symbol that you understood that it was the keys to your Airbnb. But obviously a brand is much more than that. And so we worked to create Typeface, which is a new version of Circular, a proposition, belong anywhere, and everything that you'd expect a brand to be, as well as digital products. And I don't know if anyone had used Airbnb before we did this work, but it was a very good functional product, but it lacked that kind of nice feeling, that feeling of aspiration, something that made you want to use it more and more. And so for us, it was really important that we introduced onboarding and basically something that was a much more engaging digital experience. So the use of photography, the use of tonality, the use of language. Anyway, you've all seen the Airbnb rebrand. I'm not going to talk about that. But I'm going to tell you an interesting anecdote, was that Airbnb used to be blue. Silicon Valley is mainly blue. I could have put a ton of logos up there, you know, LinkedIn, Twitter, Vimeo, etc. I noticed I got the old Facebook logo earlier, sorry. And the interesting thing was, as far as Airbnb concerned, were that they thought that blue, or cyan specifically, was a warm color, which was quite an interesting feeling, really. And so for us, it was very, very difficult for us to change them to the color that they eventually became. There was two challenges. One was the fact that they were blue, and they love blue, and the other one was the fact that one of the founders designed the previous logo. Yeah, we don't like your logo, it's shit, you need a new one. So how do we change the color? Pretty simple. We named it after the road where Airbnb was started, talked to their egos, talked to the passion about what they were doing, and also evoked positivity and talked about the fact that Airbnb wanted to be massive in Asia. And so I think if anyone out there ever wants to change a color or get someone to be convinced about a color in some kind of way, my inside tip is put some reasons behind it and they'll go for it. The other really interesting thing about the Airbnb rebrand was it's the only time when we've put a wild application in a deck that we've presented, which in this case was a sculpture, and then when you turn up on the day of launch, someone's gone and made it. And this came in on the back of a flatbed lorry, and to say I was surprised was underestimated. So yeah, that was a pretty good thing. Anyway, say what you like about the Airbnb logo, and plenty of people have said a lot. Interestingly, the biggest people that love the Airbnb logo are people on the Daily Mail, so nice to know I finally found my niche in life. But I got to write an article for The Guardian, talked about a load of bollocks on the internet. But anyway, you all know about that, you don't want to hear about that, you want to know what Koto's up to. So I'm going to show you 3 projects, all of which are created by companies that are starting in London, that we really believe in, that we think that brand and graphic design can make a massive change to. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a company called the Mouthful Food Co. They're based in Hayes in West London, owned by a really, really passionate guy called John. He's been making soup for other people for many years. If anyone's ever had soup in Oaxaca, John's made it for you. But he wanted to take that to a bigger market, i.e. supermarkets. So we started with this, which is the most basic soup experience that any of us would ever have in a home experience, a bowl, and thought about the fact that soup's all about round things, and soup's about the happy smile that you have once you've had the round thing full of lovely hot soup. And so we created this, which is a logo, which evokes those feelings, built on a custom typeface. And it's a modular logo because these guys don't just make soup, they make pesto and all kinds of other things. And so we wanted to make sure that we created a logo that worked really well on a small pot, on a big pot, and a super large pot. But at the same time, also stood away from everything else that exists in the world. So that if you put this next to Covent Garden or any of the other soups that are currently available in the market, it's got an icon that stands out. Because as I've previously talked about with Airbnb, we're all about logos. We think they are the future. I think a lot of people out there think they're dead. We think the complete opposite. But at the same time, you need to create a voice that people can speak in. So we worked with a young type designer called Nathan Matthews to come up with this typeface called Bowl Sands. And the whole thing's based upon this idea of the smile or the circle. With this as our foundation and the whole typeface built out, we've then built this guidelines, and you're the first people to ever see this, by the way. The world hasn't seen this, it's not out in the world yet, because we've all been to the talk where the person just shows their website, and let's be frank, it's fucking boring. And built up a full language, and we're currently working with him to design some nice packaging, and if all goes well, hopefully you're going to see that in Waitrose or Ocado soon. So you can see in the right-hand corner here, the logo works depending upon whatever you put it in. The next thing is Super High, which, if anyone was here at the beginning, Rick's already stole my thunder on. Super High is another product that I really, really believe in. Rick's a really, really nice guy, and if you get a chance to go to one of his coding workshops, do it. He's a really good teacher, he's really patient, and for anyone that's tried to learn to code like I have and completely failed every time, I think he could be the breakthrough. So super high is called super high, in case anyone hasn't realized, because of the internet superhighway. And for us, we thought of all the negative things that when you think about when the internet's superhighway, Netscape logos, kids kind of surfing keyboards, mid-90s PCs, etc., etc. And we thought, actually, you know what? What's really good about this name is the sense that actually if you learn to code and you take digital products and put them in everyone's hands, you have the ability to create a super high, the ability to make a hello that really sticks. So we came up with this animated living logo, which has many states, and talks about the fact that if you have an input, something that engages people, makes people realize that they have the power to create an engaging output, then you have something that becomes a modular identity that can play across all these. So this really simple logo type where we focused on the high because a digital hello is really important. And then we built this full language that builds out across emoticons and all the other various things that you would expect within a digital language, but without it being cold or dry or any of the things that digital can be sometimes. So yeah, there's Rick's business card. So if anyone wants to give him a call, that's his number. It's all built around typeface PX Grotesque, which we then added custom glyphs to, which allows Rick and really, really good digital designer called Paul McGregor, who's designed the product on the right-hand side. Hopefully, we've put brand tools in their hand that are going to create a really interesting digital product. And what we wanted to do was to put at the core of this was people, because code's all about affecting people in a positive way, and building this whole brand out. So from everything, simplicity of colors, through to typed language, through to the ability to be able to create sub-brands, it means that Rick and his team have this hopefully engaging, fresh feeling that stands them away from the kind of techie coldness of everything around that. What I should say at this point as well is that we need to thank the photographer Carol Sachs, who's lent some of her photography for us for this project. Keep it down, Nick. The ability for her to lend that photography really helps elevate this project. The last project I'm going to talk about is a really interesting one. It's a shoe brand called Augustus Pilley. So Augustus Pilley is run by a guy called Jalil Rahman, who used to work at Burberry and then used to work for Oswald Bertang. And I first met him when he worked at Oswald Bertang. And he's set out to create a new shoe brand where they're taking the best shoes, handmade in England, cost £490 a pair, made by really, really skilled workers in Northampton, and then also trainers, which are in the 300s, which are made in Italy, and create a premium product. And where it separates itself from the rest of shoe wear, or arguably the rest of fashion wear, is it has ideas behind it and reasons. So Jalil's a massive comic fan, which isn't the normal starting place that you think about for premium footwear. But he brings his passion for comics and the ideas that he has behind that to this brand. And so what he wants to do is he wants to create the idea of a badge or something that makes you feel like a superhero. So if you're getting married or you're going to work or whatever it is, when you put your shoes on, these shoes on, you feel great. With the name, it's got two parts to it, Augustus and Pilley. Augustus talks to the history of London and Londinium, which is traditionally a Roman city, and then Pilley means second son, or he who is flamboyant in Swahili. So it's the combination of these two things. One, the structure and the handmade in England and the feeling that we get when we put a great pair of shoes on, and the flamboyance of Swahili culture, celebration of color, and the way that feels. And the thing that's really fascinating about Jalil's shoes is that every shoe comes from its color palette from a different Marvel comic that he personally owns. And when he was first telling us about this, myself, Joey, Dave, and the rest of the team that made this were incredibly inspired. And we're lucky enough to work on projects like this. It's great. So we came up with this word mark. So on the left-hand side, Augustus, which is the font of the City of London, as you can see on the left-hand side. And then Pilley, written as a signature, the sense of the second son. And with that, we then set all the various shoes and created his own superhero badge that's above there. And so basically, we wanted to create a brand that completely sets itself apart and tells the story of each of the shoes, why they're called, why they're called, how the whole thing feels when it comes to life. And then that then establishes itself across everything from the bag that you buy the shoes in, through to the dust bag when you open it, through to the way that the bag turns up when you receive it in the post. And we've just done this. This is just literally coming out in the market in the next few weeks. And the most interesting thing about it is that Jalil's first customer was Elton John, who just bought £4,500 worth of shoes, and we had to rush through the brand to make sure that the brand could be embossed in his shoes, and that's just been done, and it's just on its way to him. So as a first customer, pretty good, and very happy with that. So the final thing I'm going to touch on, having shown you those 4 projects, is that at Koto, we're great believers that everything should have an idea or a reason behind it. These aren't perfect, these aren't finalized, but these are 10 rules for Koto that we've been working on. And I guess what we're all about is having reasons behind everything. Why do we want to do it? What's the point behind it? Because we find that if we have a framework, be that everything from the team that we're working with, through to the way that we talk to each other every day, through to the feeling that we have when we come to work, it'll hopefully make for a better, happier family and a better home. And the one that I should explain at the bottom there is number 10. It's not happening until it's happening. If every task or opportunity that had crossed my desk had happened, I'd have rebranded half the world's companies, flown to every country in the world and done everything. And so for us, it's a really important rule, is that we are going to see lots of opportunities come our way, but until someone puts a check in our hand or a PO or gives us something that's happening, it's not happening and it's happening. So ultimately, our aim, I think that brands can make positive change to the world. Lots of people are very critical about brands, not the people in this room, but people beyond this room. And they fail to realize that brands are purely a collection of people that are hopefully trying to make active change, as shown in Laura's talk previously, which was incredible. So yeah, that's it. Short but sweet. Thanks very much for having us.